I have two that I've been meaning to answer, and you folks have been so patient with me with this whole thing, so I want to do two on this episode. So the first one comes from @Rohit_Chaidurala on Instagram. He says, hi, Justin. I've recently started following your content and totally love everything you put out. I'm studying in culinary school right now. I need your advice or hopefully a video or podcast on this question, the importance of common sense in the kitchen and how to improve your common sense and awareness in the kitchen, how to learn the most during your intern period. Thank you for your reply. This is definitely a video that I need to build on. I love the fact that my stagiaire email template and the what do I bring to a stage video did so well. This is kind of the next step in that training that I put out there on the internet is what is some common sense things to expect on a first stage? What are good questions to ask, bad questions to ask? Kitchen etiquette, I think, is also really important. And I think once you get past those initial things, then it becomes kitchen specific, right? Different establishments have their own different quirks. So I think in that video, I would probably talk about, the basics of when you're walking through a kitchen to say behind. If you're holding a knife or something hot, let people know that you're walking by with something hot or something sharp, especially if you're not carrying it in a proper way. Things like, if someone shows you a demo of something and you have your cutting board, keep that demo in a container on your cutting board. So when you're 55 cauliflower florets in, you can reference the size of the cauliflower you're prepping towards the demo that they gave you, because oftentimes it's like a game of telephone with yourself. You'll do the first 5 and then you'll have one that's a little bit bigger, and then that becomes your normal. And then by the time you get to the end of the project, you look at the one that you number 100 versus the demo, and it's not exactly the same piece of cauliflower. So the other piece of advice that I like to give is after you've done like 5 or 10 of something, go back to the person that gave you the demo and just say, hey, I just want to double check to make sure that this is what we're looking for. And that's really good language to use. To make sure that they know that you're there to support them, not just to be a kitchen bitch, I guess is the way that I would put it. Common sense and awareness. I think just understanding what it looks like when people are super head down versus when people are, kind of a little bit more lax. What I don't want is for you to walk into a kitchen that is completely silent, a la, an Alinea or a, higher end quiet kitchen, and start to shoot the shit with other people. You know what I mean? Also not thinking that, just because you're there hanging out means that you can converse with people. And I based on your question and, the way that you seem to present yourself, I don't think that is going to be an issue for you, but some people have that problem and some people don't know what the kitchen etiquette is. Other common sense things, it's not out of the ordinary for you to ask a question on what certain things are going for. Basically, like if you're making a lobster sauce, what dishes is going on? Because I know for me, having the full picture of the dish is, lobster quenelle with saltuse and potato dauphinoise is a little bit more, it gives me more clarity on what I'm prepping for, as opposed to, well, we're just making lobster sauce right now. So think about that, ask those questions. The thing that I would really like to do with stages is before I would go in, I would try to get a copy of the menu, so I could read through it and see kind of where dishes are and how the kitchen will maybe break down. And if you're just starting, you don't have this insight, but it will grow and your awareness will grow and common sense will grow for you. What seems like common sense for me might seem like totally advanced topics for you, especially if you're just starting. And then how to learn the most during your intern period. I always like to ask especially with coaching people, is there someone in the organization that has taken an interest in mentoring you, or have you seen something that someone that you particularly latch onto that you want to continue to grow and learn with? And I think that that's very important, because if you find someone that is willing to answer your sometimes trivial and stupid questions, they can skyrocket your progress, because you spend less time wondering and more time moving on to the next question. And the more questions you can get answered, the more your knowledge base is going to grow, and then the more capable you become in the kitchen, ultimately. So hopefully that answered your question. It's definitely the next progression in the stagiaire series that I need to produce. But that definitely gives me at least somewhat of a framework to work off of. If you have more questions to ask on that, I would definitely love for you to hit me up either in the comments or tweet at me or send me another DM on Instagram, because the feedback I get from answering this question will help inform the video. And that's what I love about these kind of like living conversations that we can have with this platform. Derek C. Santiago on Instagram says, big fan of your work, both the food you cook and the advice you give. Your videos always get me to think of things in a different way that I might have not yet. You talk a lot about the restaurant you worked at in Norway. Maybe I missed this video, but how did I get the job there? He's been trying to get work overseas for a little while, and you always seem to run into the visa/sponsorship problem at every place. I've had multiple places invite me to stage for weeks at a time, but it doesn't seem financially stable for me to do that without at least the possibility of employment. I was wondering if you have any advice. Appreciate the time and all the content I put out. Thank you so much for the kind words. Happy to answer this for you. It depends on the country, I guess, is the first asterisk that I need to insert into this conversation, because so for Norway, specifically for me, the way that it worked at the time was I would put in a request for how long I wanted my visa to be, and then based on how the government saw my application, they would grant me whatever visa I would get. So my first visa I requested was 6 months. I ended up getting a year. Contrast that with my roommate John. He requested a year visa and they only gave him 6 months. And then I came back when it was time to renew my visa. I requested for a year and they gave me 2 years, which was great. So that meant that my education and my work experience and my standing as a quote unquote citizen in the country were, or a resident, I guess, not a citizen, were in good enough standing where they were like, yeah, this guy can stay. He seems like a functioning member of society. So for Norway specifically, that's what I can speak to. I know for the UK and for, other countries, in France, it's different. So the best opportunity that I would push you towards is to find a restaurant that is interested in hiring you and is full stop on wanting to sponsor your visa. That's just the cut and dry of it. It's way easier to have a business help sponsor your visa rather than you go and just try to get it on your own. Now, the advice that I have given in the past, which tends to work if you're willing to eat dirt for a little while, is to find a organization in the country that you want to live in that's willing to give you a visa because they want to hire you. It might not be your dream job, but then at least you get in the country and then you can afford to kind of, float yourself financially, where, you find a pizza shop that's wanting to hire someone and willing to sponsor your visa. They give you income. You can then get an apartment. You then have your visa, and all that stuff is then taken care of, and then you progress to go to the restaurant that you're interested in working at. Does that make sense? So you get all this initial stuff where you're not scrambling to try to figure out how I'm going to get a visa to stay in the country, and that's less stress on you, that's less stress on the restaurant, because they don't feel so rushed to get your visa pushed out. They're like, oh, well, you already have a visa, and then it's also easier if you say, well, I just like to transfer my employment from the pizza company to Relay, if you're working in Copenhagen. That's easier to do rather than saying, well, Relay, I really need you to sponsor my visa because I'm trying to land in Copenhagen in 2 weeks and I need a job. You know what I mean? Let's see. What was the other question? Multiple places invite you to stage. It doesn't seem to financially stable to do. Yeah, I would just float that, communicate that and basically say, I want a stage, but I need a potential for work. And you might just have to eat that. You might just have to work here in the US or wherever you're based out of, or if it's Canada, and just, do the savings to be able to float yourself for 3 months. I had enough for 2 months worth of expenses before I moved to Norway, and that was definitely much needed when I had to wait to get my income, and then, my initial 2 months salary got deposited into my roommate's account because they didn't want to pay taxes on it in some weird way. And it wasn't that they didn't want to pay taxes, it's just my visa hadn't processed yet. So they wanted to pay me, but they couldn't technically pay me because I needed a visa to then get my bank account. It's a mess. So it's not for everyone. You have to definitely be at a certain stage in your life when you're okay with doing these kinds of things. But yeah, that would be my advice, is to find a place that can float you or is willing to sponsor you. The luxury I had was the chef I wanted to work for didn't want to hire Norwegians. I mean, he wanted to hire Norwegians. It's just he knew that the caliber of chefs coming out of Norway was not the same as chefs coming from the US or France or Amsterdam or Spain. You know what I mean? And so he was willing to do that extra legwork on the back end to get these people visas because he knew that it would result in better staff for his newly opening restaurant. So if you can find someone like that, that's definitely the way to go.